So to deploy our application to Heroku, we need to add it to a Git repository. A Git repository is basically a database that contains our source code and all its versions. So every time we change our code, we commit it to this repository. Now, this repository is local on our machine. So as part of the deployment process, we need to set up another Git repository in Heroku that mirrors our local repository. When we're ready to deploy, we push the changes from our local repository to the repository in Heroku. Now, Heroku has a process that sits in the background. It's constantly watching this Git repository. Whenever it detects changes in this repository, it will check out the latest source code from this repository and copy it to the right folders. That is the big picture. Now let's see this process in action. So the first step is to add our code to a Git repository. So here on the terminal, run git init. With this, we're initializing a Git repository in the current folder. Now here you see this message, reinitialized existing Git repository, because I already created a Git repository early on when I created this project. So this is a command that you run only once, the very first time you want to initialize a Git repository. Now, every time you make changes to your code, you run git add period. This adds all the modified and new files in the current directory and all its subdirectories to the staging area and prepares them to be included in the next commit. So let's go ahead. Now, all these files are in the staging area and they will be included in the next commit. So now to commit, we run git commit -m for adding a message to this commit. We're going to say initial commit. Now, next time we change our code, we make small changes and do a commit to Git. In that commit, we should give a proper label to that commit so we know what changes we made. Did we fix a bug? Did we add a new feature? What did we do? With this, we can build a history of changes to our code, which is very valuable. So now we committed all these files in Git. So our local Git repository is now updated. Beautiful. Now, we are done with all the Git work. Next, we need to create a Heroku app using Heroku CLI. So first we need to log in. So run Heroku login. Type your email, programwithmosh@gmail.com. Obviously, you're going to use your own, not mine. Then enter your password. Okay, you can see I'm logged in as programwithmosh@gmail.com. So next, we run Heroku create to create a new Heroku app. So Heroku created an app and it gave it a random unique name. In this case, my app is limitless-crag-337 whatever. On your machine, this is going to be different. We can also give a name while creating a Heroku app. For example, Heroku create Vidly, but that name has to be unique. And here you can see the address of your app in the cloud. So currently, if we head over to this address, we see this default page because we haven't deployed our application yet. Now, when we run Heroku create, three things happen. First, Heroku creates this app at this address. Second, it creates a Git repository at this address. So it's git.heroku.com/the name of our application .git. And third, it tells our current local Git repository in this folder about this new remote Git repository. So now to deploy our application, all we have to do is to run git push Heroku master. This will push the changes in our local repository in the master branch to the Heroku repository. Now, let's see what happens. So all our code is now pushed into Heroku. Heroku detected a Python app. It's installing Python version 3.7.1. Then it detected the dependencies of our application from our pip file. In this case, we have a dependency to Django, white noise, and a bunch of other packages. So Heroku is automatically downloading and installing them from PyPI. Next, it's installing our SQLite database. Now, as I told you before, SQLite is a very simple and lightweight database. We shouldn't really use it in a cloud environment because it doesn't have security and it cannot serve multiple users. But for the purpose of this tutorial, it gets the job done. In a real application, you should use an enterprise database engine like MySQL, Postgres, Microsoft SQL Server, and so on. But that's a topic for a different video. So now you can see our application is deployed to Heroku, and here's the address of our application. Now, for some reason that I don't know, this address magically changed while recording this video. Let's not worry about that and go ahead. Next, we need to tell Heroku to allocate one web server to this application. So we run Heroku ps:/scale space web equals 1. So we're allocating one web server to this application. In the future, if you have a popular application with thousands or hundreds of thousands of users, you can simply come back and allocate more web servers by increasing this number. Okay, we're done. Now finally, we can open our application by running Heroku open. This simply opens a web browser pointing to your application. Now, by default, you're going to get this error, disallowed host. This is to prevent a common security attack called HTTP host header attacks. The explanation of that goes beyond the scope of this tutorial. You can read about it on your own, but to fix this problem, we need to come back here, open up our settings file, and search for allowed hosts. Here in this list, we need to add the address of our website. That is this address here. So this web page is telling us you may need to add Mighty Oasis, whatever that is. On your machine, it's going to be different. So let's copy the string and add it here. So note that this is a string, okay? Save the changes. Now, as I told you before, every time you change your code, you need to commit your code to your local repository. And when you're ready to deploy, you need to push it to Heroku. So back in the terminal, to commit our code to our local repository, we type git add period git commit, give it a proper descriptive label like add Heroku app to allowed hosts. Now our local repository is updated. Before we get ready to deploy, you might have to make several changes. Different developers in our team might make tens or hundreds of commits. Now, when we're ready to commit, we simply run git push Heroku master. All right, Heroku went through all these steps one more time. Now, let's get back here and refresh this page. There you go. This is a Ridley application in Heroku. Let's go to the list of movies. So our SQLite database is also deployed. In my local database, I had 2 movies. That's why they also exist in the production environment. But these 2 databases are different. So here in our production environment, we can head over to admin and log in with the same credentials. And then go to the list of movies and add a new movie here. We also have a fully working RESTful API that we can access at /API/movies. So here are the movies in our database represented as JSON. And that concludes our Django tutorial. I hope you learned a lot and thank you for watching.